4 months into this war, how many of its stated objectives do you believe Israel has managed to achieve? And the one question that's uppermost in everyone's mind is simply this: are we likely to see Israel and Hamas reach a ceasefire agreement in the next few days or weeks? Because that's what the entire world is hoping to see, and also perhaps that is the only way we're going to see the hostages, the remaining hostages, being released.
Good evening, Nea. Good to see you. Good to be here again. I'll start with your second question about whether it will happen. And I'm of the opinion that a ceasefire and a truce with Hamas will happen. The fact that there is an offer on the table means that Hamas is considering, let's say, a hostage release pact with Israel. And of course, this is just a negotiation. So this is the first part. And tomorrow there is another round of discussion in Cairo, in Egypt. And I'm sure that eventually they'll reach an agreement. One point that needs to be stressed is the hostage families, which put a lot of pressure in Israel. So on one hand, the objective of this war was to eliminate, as we say, Hamas. And the second one was, of course, releasing the hostages. I think that it's more realistic now to at least achieve one goal, which is release of the hostages. I don't think that we have, and as IDF spokesperson said, Hagari said, we have a moral obligation. And the moral obligation is in a very substantial obligation of the Israeli people, of the Israeli government, to the hostages, families, and to the entire nation. So if we are able to release the hostages, it will be achieving a main goal of this war. 4 months, our nation is 76 years old, and we believe that, I believe that waiting 4 months or 5 months, another 5 months is not an issue, as long as we are able to get the hostages. And as you rightly said, the 136 out of them, we assume from Reuters and from other sources that about 50 are already dead, which means that if we wait longer, we will lose more hostages, and we cannot afford it. So I hope that this agreement will progress into a concrete agreement. Unfortunately, we will have to reach some ceasefire. According to this pact, we will release over 1,000 prisoners, which we say they are with blood on their hands. Many of them have life imprisonment, which means that they were engaged in terror attacks that kill people. But still, it's better to have the hostages back, regain, I would say, trust of the people in the government, because we need those hostages back. And then we will have to try to reach, of course, a peace will be the best thing. But unfortunately, knowing that Hamas is leading Gaza, I'm a bit skeptical that reaching a peace agreement with them is possible. I mean, the leader of Hamas need to go out of Gaza, and then we can really talk. I wouldn't say business, but we can talk peace. That's how I view the situation.
Okay. Let me go across to Lev Aaron now. Lev, I have already outlined the main provisions of this proposed ceasefire agreement that has been put forth by Hamas as a counter proposal to Israel's own ceasefire deal. Now, it will be evaluated, I'm sure, by the Israelis and the Americans. But here lies the problem. While I think it would be safe to assume that both sides desperately need a ceasefire, the Palestinians need some respite. Too many people have died in Gaza. And on the other hand, Israel needs to bring home the remaining hostages. If news reports are to be believed, as many as 50 of them are already dead. Israel does not want to lose more. But here lies the trouble. Israel has said time and again it will not withdraw its troops from Gaza until a complete victory has been achieved over Hamas. Hamas, on the other hand, it seems, is hell-bent on not allowing any further hostages to be released without guarantees that the war will end and that the Israeli forces will exit Gaza. How do you believe the two sides can find a meeting ground with such deeply entrenched positions on either side?
Thank you for inviting me. I think it is a very good question because the main reason that so many people in Israel say, okay, let's go for a deal with Hamas is because we believe that with valorization of jihad among Hamas, we can meet what they demand, because anyway, they will try to attack us again. And once they attack us again, and there are no hostages in Gaza, then we can wage a real war against Hamas. Because right now, because of the hostages, the war is dragging. So many things that IDF knows to do, IDF cannot do because of the hostages. So all those who say, look, we should go for a deal with Hamas, what they really mean is that valorization of jihad among Hamas is too strong, and anyway, in the future, there will be a final war between Israel and Hamas. And therefore, now the top priority of Israel should be releasing the hostages and wait for Hamas to make a mistake and attack Israel again.
Okay, but you know, that may very well mean that not just thousands of innocent Palestinians, but even the remaining hostages could end up as collateral damage. Is that a price that Israel is willing to pay? Because one of the stated objectives of this war from the very start was the safe return of all the hostages, and we know that's not going to happen now because almost 50 of them are already dead. Let me bring in our Indian guest, Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Ambassador Goyal, I want to put the same two fundamental questions to you. In your assessment, 4 months into this war, how many of its stated objectives has Israel really managed to achieve, all the rhetoric aside? And two, do you see the two sides being able to arrive at a ceasefire agreement anytime in the foreseeable future? Because even though both sides need it, the well-entrenched positions on both sides seem to be making it virtually impossible.
Neha, I wish I could answer your questions in the same simple manner that you put the questions to me. I say simple basically because they sound simple, they sound straightforward. But the very fact that so far, even after 4 months, there has been no solution, there has been no holding of ceasefire, clearly indicates the situation is much more complex than what anybody could imagine it to be. Let me now break it down into some steps, really. Number one, the very fact that Israel has received the ceasefire proposal, how much ever complicated and difficult it can be, from Hamas, does indicate that they know that the solution, security solution they seek in Hamas, in Gaza, may not be possible unless they are prepared to sacrifice lives of more hostages. So therefore, the acceptance to be able to talk is number one thing. I think it's a very welcome step, number one. Number two, both Hamas and Israel want to proceed further, provided they get the most of what they want. But more important than that are the security guarantees. Who is going to guarantee that whatever commitments are made by either Hamas or Israel are adhered to, are fulfilled. I think that is where the USA comes. This is the election year, and there is a lot at stake for Joe Biden during the election. And therefore, I think Joe Biden himself will have a lot to really do in terms of being able to ensure that this prevails.